everybody. I hope your Friday is off to a good start and hope you have a great weekend. Welcome to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Cut down day for the Browns. They have to get to their 53-man regular season roster tomorrow, Saturday by 4 p.m. So there's some nervous hours ahead for the Browns, the back half of that roster. Of course, the Browns wrapped up their regular season against the Lions last night. Not many starters played. There were no starters played, and not many people that are really battling for those last few roster spots played. But the Browns were active yesterday in the trade market. They acquired a tackle, Wyatt Teller, from the Buffalo Bills. They sent the Bills their 5th and 6th round picks. They got back Teller, who is a guard, started some games for the Bills last year, and the 7th round pick of the Bills next season. So they gave up a 5th and a 6th. They got a guy who can play tackle and a 7th round pick. Let's welcome in our Browns expert, Jake Burns. Jake, when you look at Wyatt Teller, a guy that started some games for the Bills, what do you see in Teller, and what did the Browns get with Wyatt Teller from the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing they're going to get is help along the right guard situation. I think it's somewhere they still feel unsettled about. I think last night's game didn't do any favors for anybody because Drew Forbes ends up hurting his ankle. Looked like a relatively high ankle sprain, and those are never fun to deal with. He was sort of making a late push, but what it tells me, Dave, is that they're not necessarily comfortable with who they have at right guard. I think they know that they can go into the season with Eric Kush, but they feel like they might need a better alternative, somebody with a little bit higher floor, and Wyatt Teller gives them that. He's a little stiff in terms of hip flexibility, being able to make some turns, but a powerful guy who plays well within his frame, very good hands, very good punch. I think the Browns looked at this as an opportunity to get a guy who could, at the baseline, be a player that could potentially start for them. And if things work out well with this scheme, and if he connects well with James Camp, and it could be a guy who potentially is a long-term, starter at right guard. The Bills just have shuffled some things around, and I don't think that Teller was necessarily a guy that was going to get cut. I think he was going to be a depth player for them. But the Bills have a little better, center right guard, or not center, but just right guard situation. So it made I would say it made sense for both teams to pull the trigger on this kind of deal. Gives the Bills some draft capital late in next year's draft, and helps the Browns feel like they have somebody solid there who, if forced to move on from Kush, or if Eric Kush gets hurt, they can get the job done, because I don't think they feel totally confident in Drew Forbes just yet, or Austin Corbett if they keep him around.
When you look at that offensive line, how big of a concern is it? Is that something? Are the issues that you see with the line things that can get worked out as the season goes along, or is it something that screams of it's going to be problematic for a while?
Yeah, Dave, I don't think it'll ever be a strength. I think that this group can be fine. I think there are ways that they can scheme around it, and allow the group to be better than what the individual parts are. I think they have two good individual parts in Treader and Batonio. Questionable with the tackles. I just think that those guys are average to below average players, and then they're figuring out right guard. So they have to find a way to take the individual parts and make those individual parts a better collective sum, which is possible. I think you saw in the last half of last year they're able to do that. The quarterback helps immensely. Coaches can help in terms of some of the schematic adjustments they do, and I just kind of view it as it's not a problem until it's a problem. I think week 3 of the preseason caused everybody to panic a little bit, but they were leaving most of those linemen. They were leaving in tough shotgun passing situations, no deception. Sometimes 5 wide, just throwing the football and being very bluntly obvious that they were throwing the football. And, when you do that and defenses know that that's coming, they're going to be able to, eliminate half of the guessing game, which a big part of football is deception. Are they going to run or are they going to throw? And when you're sort of forcing your offensive linemen to sit on an island against defensive linemen who are very skilled and sit on like I said, sit on an island knowing a pass is coming. They wanted to put that pressure on this group. I don't think they have intentions of doing that to them in the regular season, but they were very clearly going into game 3 with a game plan of, hey, let's throw the football from the shotgun, put some pressure on these guys. And I don't think that they were good by any means, but I didn't think that they were bad. And to me, it was a very calculated game plan that said, hey, let's put some pressure on these guys, put them in a situation that they'll feel if we ever get down in a game early, and attack it from there. And I thought that they were fine. Like the Browns could have moved the ball well against Tampa Bay, just some drop passes here and there. So the overall freak out about the offensive line, I've continued to say it, is not necessarily warranted right now. I think if you're looking for problem areas, you can find them on any roster. And, the Browns, I don't think you're wrong in saying that this could be a problem area, but let's let it be a problem before it's a problem, if that makes sense.
It seems to me that they're screening the ball, throwing screen passes, and pretty effectively. Is that accurate from what you've seen? It looks like they have put an emphasis on that, and that's going to be something that can be very effective for this offense.
Yeah, especially if you have teams who are going to be rushing upfield quickly, and I think guys are going to try to really beat those tackles around the edge. Greg Robinson and Chris Hubbard are two guys who anchor pretty well, but they don't necessarily deal with speed very well, so teams will send those defensive ends upfield quickly, and I think you can combat that with screens. Nick Chubb's a very effective screen game running back, proved it last year. He has a nice job of catching the ball, finding a little hole, a little crease, and bursting through there. He's pretty effective at it and catches the football better than some people think. So, in my opinion, the screen game stuff will be a big part of what they do. Freddie Kitchens made it a big part of branching off of his run game looks last year. So yeah, I would expect the screen aspect of things to be a heavy part of not just running back screens, but wide receiver screens too, to get the ball out of Mayfield's hands quickly and sort of mitigate risk when you don't necessarily need to. And screen game stuff is really effective as a part of a game plan, for getting guys on the perimeter quickly, getting the ball out into their hands and letting linemen get out in front and block. And if you can play against some teams that don't plan accordingly and don't read keys accordingly, I think you can really take advantage of that. And the Browns did a little of it in the last half of last year.
When you watched last night's game, what'd you take away, that final preseason game? Who do you think really helped themselves? Did anybody kind of hurt themselves? Just an overall look at that fourth preseason game.
Yeah, I think Devereaux Lawrence has continued to prove that he's the first rotational defensive tackle. I think he's finally figured it out. Some guys, the light bulb clicks on, and I think Devereaux has mentioned it too, that just I'm trusting in what I do. I trust in my ability. And he's playing without thinking. And I think sometimes guys think too much about what move should I use here, what technique should I use, and they just don't play. And I think he's finally healthy, seems healthier than he's been in a little while, and he's playing fast, he's playing without thinking, and he's playing in a scheme that he's comfortable in. And I think he's really anchored himself and locked himself into a job. I thought Derek Willis locked himself into a job. Garrett Gilbert should be on this roster. I certainly think he's played himself into a job. And I think the offensive line sort of solidified itself yesterday in terms of who the backups will be. I certainly think, they're not going to keep another tackle. Brad Seaton kind of proved that I don't think he's going to make the roster. Those games are so tough. It's who they're really looking at. I think there'll be some surprises. I do think there'll be a couple names that we didn't expect to make the roster on the defensive side of the football. It just seems to always go that way. They keep somebody that they really like as a special teams guy, and you just didn't expect it. It'll happen to me, I'm sure, because I put out a prediction the other day. But yeah, I think they might have another trade. I just kind of have a hunch that they're going to try to go get somebody else, and then possibly a waiver wire guy. I think it's important for fans to know that the waiver wire, the Browns won't be in front of that this year. That waiver wire goes once teams make their cut at 4 o'clock. That goes in the order that the draft went in. We typically have been accustomed the last few years to having that first look at the waiver wire. It will be 17th this year. So, they might not be as active. I think they added 3 or 4 guys last year right after the waiver cuts and cut some guys that were a little bit unexpected, and like Carl Nassib, for example. I don't think there's going to be any of that. There might be a guy or two, but I do think they might be active in one more trade. So, my biggest takeaway from last night is that Garrett Gilbert should be the number 2 guy, though. I think he's proven to be the most effective of the backup quarterbacks group from camp through the 4th preseason game. So I'm hoping they go in that direction.
Jake Burns with us. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Want to tell you about Northeast Factory Direct. If you need furniture and you want really nice stuff but don't want to spend an outrageous amount of money, you got to check out Northeast Factory Direct. They have sofas, sectionals, theater seating, bedroom sets, mattresses, kitchen tables, dining room sets, hot tubs, pool tables. There's more. Kitchen cabinets, granite countertops. It's the same stuff, if not nicer than you'd find at the big expensive retail stores. The owner, Alex, a great guy, could charge you the same price as big stores, but he buys in volume, cuts out all the expensive overhead, passes on the savings to you. 3 locations: West 140th Street in Cleveland, the old B&B Appliance on Lakeland Boulevard in Euclid, and Freeway Drive in Macedonia. You can check out everything at northeastfactorydirect.com. We're going to take a quick time out. When we return, Jake Burns and I will break down the Browns on the defensive side of the football. More sports and less Levine. The Weekend Winners Edition will return. Stay with us.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino now has sports betting. Use one of the 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet. Then watch your favorite games on our new HD televisions or visit our new sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program has been recognizing role model students and teachers since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Supporting Education. There, you can nominate students in kindergarten through 12th grade as academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible for the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. More sports and less Levine. The Weekend Winners Edition continues, and we continue to take a look at the Browns getting ready for the season opener against the Titans next weekend. Let's welcome back in Jake Burns, our Browns expert. Jake, talked a lot about the offensive line. Let's switch the focus to the defense. Last week when we talked, you mentioned the defensive line might be the biggest upgrade. They went out and dominated the line of scrimmage. How good can this defensive line be?
Yeah, I think there's a chance they could just be like one of the NFL's best. I think it's kind of crazy to think about, the Browns having position groups that are among the elite in the NFL, more than one. And I certainly think that there's justifiable reasons for this being one of them. When you look at the 2 defensive ends and trying to slow those guys down between Miles and Olivier, and then you got to deal with Sheldon Richardson, who's really powerful player on the inside. When your 4th best guy is Larry Ogunjobi, who can do his own things. If either one of those 2 interior players draw one-on-one matchups, it's very skilled. It's just a very skilled group. And then you have really, really solid depth in Chris Smith and Anthony Zettel on the outside. Chad Thomas might make the roster as sort of another guy on the outside. The emergence of, as I said earlier, of Devereaux Lawrence, he can be an impact interior player with, Trevon Coley sort of in a more fit role for him as a backup interior defensive lineman, then you have just a really solid group. It should be a group that leads the Browns. And, if they play like we saw week 3 there, like you said, Dave, if they play with that sort of passion and they're able to get home on quarterbacks and the secondary can just hold their own for a little while, it could be a very dangerous group.
Well, when you think about the elite defenses, if you have an elite defensive line, it hides a lot of blemishes because there's just no time to do anything. And that's kind of what this group could potentially be.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have one or the other, either a secondary who can blanket. And there's a lot of people who rage about that debate of which is more important, pass rush or pass coverage. I think as long as one of the 2 of those you have are, elite in some form or fashion, you can make up for the other. And I don't even think the Browns need to have a defensive line that makes up for the corners and safeties, because I think those guys can hold their own. So you get a good mix of, the defensive line is elite, and then you have guys who can cover as well. Maybe not the best coverage group in the NFL, but they don't need to be. If they can just be solid, average secondary players and, take away some immediate options and allow those guys up front to work, then, like you said, it's dangerous for quarterbacks because you just know from both edges you're going to have pressure, and then, I could possibly be having pressure up the middle. And if you're bringing pressure from all four areas, and John Dorsey's been very adamant about that, saying we want 4 guys who can get after the quarterback. It's not necessarily a run-stopping league anymore. The teams who win the most games, have a tendency to allow more rushing yards per attempt. It's just a matter of, how you capitalize on third downs and how you get after the quarterback. And I think the Browns really emphasize getting guys up front who we say 4 guys who can play the quarterback and on the way to the quarterback can stop the run too when needed.
Do you like the scheme fit, what Steve Wilks is trying to do with this defense as opposed to what the Browns were trying to do last year? It's pretty dramatic how different they're playing defense.
Yeah, I certainly think that Greg Williams is a fan of bringing pressure. It's no secret he's always been that way, but he's a little more passive in the secondary. I don't think Steve Wilks is going to be as passive in the secondary in terms of off coverage, giving quarterbacks some easy answers. I think his goal is to say, we're going to use 11 aggressive players and we're going to put better athletes on the field. So instead of 3 linebackers all the time, we're going to have an extra defensive back, whether it's a safety or a slot corner, who can run with some of these better athletes. So the emphasis is we want to have as many pass coverage guys on the second level, including Joe Schobert, who's a really effective pass coverage linebacker, as many of those guys on the field as possible. As many of our quality athletes on the field as possible, too. Take a linebacker out, bring in a guy who can do a little bit of both, be a hybrid player, and can provide, some of those traits that we need and play better in space. I think the Browns will cover the run game better laterally, sideline to sideline. I think there'll be a better group there this year. And, the personnel's a little better, too. So keep that in mind when you look at, some of these guys, or I guess the collective defense's production, because you're getting year 3 of Denzel Ward, and Demarius Randall's now in year 2 of playing a safety role. And then you've improved, obviously, immensely, bringing in, Olivier and Sheldon to go along with year 3 now of Miles, and I should say this year 2 of Denzel Ward. But yeah, year 3 of Miles and Larry Ogunjobi. So this is a group that's matured at the right time. The pace has gotten better in terms of where these guys are in their career, and the scheme is going to match up with some drastic changes. And I think Freddie's been very vocal about, you guys aren't talking about the defense enough, and I think that this group, it just has a shot to be really, really good.
Who is somebody that, might be flying a little bit under the radar that you might expect to pop come regular season on that defensive side of the ball?
I do think Eric Murray is going to be a really vital part of what they do. He's number 22, in case you haven't noticed. He's going to be a guy. He was the return for the trade of Emmanuel Ogbah to Kansas City, so they really liked his game, where he can fit in. He can play deep safety and 2 safety looks. He can play tight end coverage, walk down and play over a tight end. He can play over the slot. He's done a little bit of everything. I don't think he's going to be an all-pro player or a Pro Bowl player, but I do think he's going to be a vital part of anchoring, run game support, setting the edge, keeping things turned inside to their linebackers and defensive linemen. And I think he'll cover well enough, too. I think him and Jermaine Whitehead are going to be a couple of players who are going to play that role predominantly. And I think they're both going to be a little better than what people think. You're going to hear those names a lot. I think the Browns will be creative with how they use them. And those guys have the potential, if they play above their playing level in the past, which I think they could. It's just preseason optimism. Everybody across the league has it. But if those guys play above what they've been able to play in their career, it could take this defense to take it to a whole nother level.
If there's an area of concern, if there was a group that you say, boy, if these guys do what they're capable of, not play over their head, but do what they're capable of, this defense could be really good. So is there a key area that you see with this defense to make it what it could potentially be?
Yeah. I think we've had this conversation a couple times. It's linebackers to me. I think they're coming back. Joe Schobert missed time with injury last year. I think he had a groin or a hamstring and missed some games. And, Christian Kirksey was shut down for the year after his hamstring issue. If those guys are healthy and Christian Kirksey sort of returns to his level of play from a couple years before, and then you allow Joe Schobert to play the middle, play less pass coverage dependent stuff, and play the run game a little bit more. It could help his missed tackle issue. But yeah, and Joe Schobert's had a really strong preseason. So if those two can return to form, make plays across the field, I think they have to be more impactful run game defenders. If they can do those things and then carry over their athleticism into the pass coverage situations when they need to, Al Holcomb, who's their linebackers coach, who was the defensive coordinator under Steve Wilkes last year in Arizona, I think those guys will coach them up right. I think they'll get better coaching than they have in the past few years, and I just have high hopes for them. I think if those guys, if those guys play to what they're capable, their ceiling, the ceiling that we've seen from both of them, they're both Pro Bowl level players. If they're able to do that in this scheme that might be a little more friendly to them, it's just going to make the group that much better. But again, if they're not, and Joe Schobert's struggling in the run game, and Christian Kirksey continues to sort of get lost in the wash and not read things as well as he did the past few years as an off-ball linebacker, if he continues to sort of struggle being where he needs to be, then they're not going to stop many people in terms of being able to play run game sound defense, and it'll get annoying, and teams will be sort of gashing them. And keep in mind, week one, a really good running back comes into Cleveland. They start out, think about their first 3 games. They have Derrick Henry, an extremely good physical, huge running back who runs well for Tennessee, and then you mix in Dion Lewis, their wide receiver back. Then the next week you get Le'Veon Bell, who I know he missed a full year, but he was one of the game's best running backs in terms of being a dual threat player. And then Todd Gurley comes in week 3. So it's like you got to be ready to go right off the bat. And then, week 5 creeps around, and that's Baltimore. Or I think maybe Baltimore's week 4. But that's obviously a run game system that you never really see. So the Browns' run defense is going to be put to the test early. I don't think they have to be otherworldly against the run, but they can't allow teams to run the ball for 5 or 6 yards of carry and jump out to a lead on them. And all of a sudden they're fighting against that sort of, how do we figure out how to stop the run? And then when teams get the run game going, play action's brutal.
Jake Burns, you got one more in you? Talk about the 53-man roster and cutdown day. When we return, we're going to take a quick time out. Well, you know what? You can explore your future and find a program that puts you on a path to a bright future. Tri-C offers more than 1,000 courses and over 140 career and technical programs. Go to tri-c.edu, that's tri-c.edu to find out more. Tri-C, where futures begin. In the immediate future here on More Sports and Less Levine, Jake Burns will break down the 53-man roster. Cut down day, 4 o'clock Saturday. So 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Jake Burns will be back, and we'll talk about who the Browns will keep on that 53-man roster. More Sports and Less Levine. Weekend Winners Edition will be right back. Stay with us.
No other company or product can match the features, benefits, and warranty of an authentic Nature Stone floor.
We had a horrible storm that flooded our basement.
We had to take out that nasty moldy carpet.
And we never want to have to go through that again. That's when we called Nature Stone.
And with Russell's Promise, our true unconditional warranty, you will never have to replace your basement flooring again. Get Nature Stone installed by the end of August and save up to 50%. Schedule your free cost estimate easily online today at naturestone.com. It's not just a floor, wow, it's Nature Stone.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's Kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Cutdown day across the NFL, 4 o'clock Eastern Time, Saturday, tomorrow. So the Browns and everybody else across the NFL has to be at that 53-man roster. Let's bring back in our Browns expert, Jake Burns. Jake, when you look at the Browns roster as a total, the upgrade is pretty significant. Who are some guys that are kind of on that bubble that you look at?
Yeah, I think a name that is interesting to me. Let's talk about the kicking game. It seems like Austin Seibert has won that battle. He is going to be the kicker heading into the year. So that's a veteran now. Greg Joseph, who kicked the entire year last year's out. And then I don't know. I think that there could be a surprise. They might keep Jamie Gillen. Listen, I would have said 2 weeks ago that it was 90% sure that 95% sure that Britton Colquitt would be back as the punter, but Jamie Gillen has just continued to impress, and he not only is able to punt the ball effectively with ridiculous distance and depth, he's also athletic enough to go down and make tackles and be a plus defender on your special teams group. And even if you get into a pinch, a nice part of what he can do is he's got field goal kicking experience, which is also important, and he's come along really nicely as a holder. I'm to the point where it's 60-40 now, and I could see Gillen, there's a 40% chance of making the roster if they want to lose the salary there to Colquitt and go young and continue developing this guy, because he's an NFL level punter. And if he's able to, I'm not sure he's able to be stashed away for another year. So if they feel some pressure to keep him and settle that on Gillen for the long term, that's one to watch. I think offensively, it feels to me like Braxton Miller is going to make the team. He could still not, obviously, but it just feels like the way they brought him in and moving on from Jalen Strong and needing a guy for 4 weeks just to hold over until Antonio Callaway returns. It just seems to make a little bit of sense in terms of versatility that he could provide. Offensive line-wise, Austin Corbett should be nervous. I certainly think he's on the precipice of not making the roster. He'll probably make it because they don't want to give up on a 33rd overall pick in just over 1 year's time. But he should be very nervous because he has just been anemic in the preseason. I certainly don't trust what he's been able to do. And like I said, he'll probably make it, but he shouldn't feel comfortable. Defensively, something weird is probably going to happen at defensive end. Either Zettel's not going to make the roster, or Chad Thomas might not make this roster. Carl Davis is probably out. Danny Aquale is sort of on that bubble too, depending on defensive tackles, how many they want to keep. That should be interesting. Aquale is kind of like the third guy there behind Lawrence and Coley, so it'll see if they want to keep, that many, at least 6 defensive tackles alone. Linebacker-wise, Ray Armstrong's probably going to make it, maybe just special teams-wise, because he doesn't really add much defensively. He's a guy to pay attention to, whether he finds a way to fit on this roster. I think those are the guys who are kind of like right on the cusp. But again, it depends. There's so much. It's hard to predict these things because I predicted it 2 days ago, and they've already traded for Teller, who's going to make it obviously as a right guard. It's like they'll probably cut some people we don't expect and have another couple names that they just sort of scoop up and whether those guys are free agents or whether those guys are waiver claims, I don't know. But I certainly think that there's always, with John Dorsey, there seems to be a level of unpredictability on some of those 2 or 3 or 4 names that we just didn't either know about because they're playing somewhere else, or we didn't know that they had their eye on those things. So some of those guys too you think are safe. Like I would have never guessed Carl Nassib didn't make the team last year, and that move is kind of in hindsight not worked out very well. But at the same time, I think that you just can never feel 100% solid about some of these guys. So even like the Derek Willies who have played well, or the Dearness Johnson running back who has played well, you never know. They might feel like there's a running back on waivers or a free agent that they feel more comfortable with behind Hilliard or even alongside Hilliard to back up until Kareem Hunt gets back. So my answer is expect the unexpected in this the next 24 hours here.
You mentioned, and I had the same sense that there may be another trade. I don't think it's going to be for a marquee name, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to find a way to get another young offensive lineman that they like. Is that kind of the mode that you're thinking? They're not going to go out and trade for Trent Williams. They're not going to put a big-time money guy on that offensive line. But they might find some young guys that John Dorsey or Alonzo Highsmith thinks this guy's on the verge of developing if we put him in the right situation. Is that kind of the mindset that you had? Is they're going to look for line help?
Yeah, I don't think they're done looking at line help. I think you look at franchises like New England; those teams are going to go out and get the people they want. Don't be discouraged too if somebody they go out and trade for somebody like Teller because people are like, well, this guy's going to get cut anyway. Well, that could be the case, but you don't know that you're going to have a chance for him in the waiver wire at 17. Some team could claim him before you, and I think if the Browns go out and get somebody, it's because they really want that guy and they don't want to risk not being able to get that player on the waiver wire. So keep that in mind. That's all I'll say. Just because they go out and get somebody and the opposing fan base says, well, that guy was going to be cut anyway. Well, that's okay because they want to make sure that they get that person, and they're going to do what they have to make sure they get that person. I know for a fact that's what happened with Teller, and I'm not sure Teller was even getting cut anyway. He's a really good depth piece for the Bills, but look at it as they're going to go get who they want. They're not going to, if you find a player you really want, say you find a young tackle they really like, and they think he's going to get cut, or they think maybe a team's going to keep him for depth, they're going to say, what do we got to do to make sure we get this person? We don't want to kind of just play the luck game, and that's what I would keep in mind. And I think that teams like the Browns should be proactive when they have this roster in place. Don't be passive. Don't hope things are going to work out. Be aggressive. Go get the guys you think you can develop, and try to set this thing up for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, the other thing is to remember, this roster has been upgraded significantly, so it gets more and more difficult for them to go find players that can help. If they like and identify somebody, they got to do what they can do to bring them in and get them here.
Yeah, and those are tough cuts. I mean, in the past year, there might have been 15 guys who the coaching staff were saying, all right, we have 35 guys or 38 guys we feel really good about. We have 15 guys that are fringe, so let's debate this. It might be just 5 or 6 this year. They might really like – I'm sure they do. I'm sure they really like a majority of this roster. There's probably less roster discussion going on than in years past than Browns fans are accustomed to is there's a lot of things here are in place, and that includes the offensive line. I think the first 5 guys are the first 5 guys right now. So it's just less, it's less need. It's less, and anytime you have less need in the NFL, the better situation you're in. You don't have to reach or overextend for things. I think they feel like they settled to one spot that they probably need to reach or overextend at, and now they're just sort of going to pick and choose if they want to go out and get somebody because they think this guy will be a very, very clear upgrade to what they have in-house. Last question I'll ask you, Jake. Again, appreciate the time. Great stuff. What rookie do you think is poised to potentially really make an impact? We had all those defensive guys that have shown they can play. Which one do you think might be the guy that kind of grabs everybody's attention come regular season? I think a lot of people would answer Mack Wilson. I think Mack had a really strong early preseason. He struggled still in the run game where I think he's got to get better. Sort of slowed down by the end of camp. I do think he's going to play. I think he's going to find the field, but I just think Greedy Williams is going to find a way to make an impact. He's too good. I just think he's too good at what they want to do, and they're going to let Terrence Mitchell get the crack to start the year, but I think they're going to find ways to get Greedy on the football field because they absolutely should. He's a playmaker. I think he's a guy who can cover a lot of variety of wide receiver prototypes, and I just think by the end of the year, you're going to feel really comfortable about Greedy Williams being the long-term piece, the long-term starter opposite Denzel. And, in my opinion, he has the most, I guess, the betting odds favorite to make the most impact this year based on how he played in camp, preseason, and just feeling good about needing to solidify that position long-term. Jake Burns, great stuff as always. Our Browns expert, Browns film breakdown analyst, Jake Burns, great stuff as always. Want to tell you about Northeast Factory Direct. If you need furniture and you want really nice stuff, don't want to spend an arm and a leg, you got to check out Northeast Factory Direct. They have sofas, sectionals, theaters, seating, bedroom sets, mattresses, kitchen tables, dining room sets. Wait, there's more. Hot tubs, pool tables, kitchen cabinets, granite countertops, and more. The same stuff, if not nicer, than you find at big, expensive retail stores. The owner, Alex, is a good guy. He could charge you the same thing the big stores do. Buys in volume, cuts out the expensive overhead, passes on the savings to you. 3 locations, brick and mortar locations, West 140th Street in Cleveland. In the old B&B Appliance on Lakeland Boulevard in Euclid and Freeway Drive in Macedonia. Check out everything that they have, northeastfactorydirect.com. We're going to take a quick time out here on More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. When we return, we'll hear from Freddie Kitchens as the Browns get set to cut down to the 53-man regular season roster. More Sports and Less Levine, Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
As a kid growing up, my dream was to go to college, play baseball, and get a degree. Coming out of high school, I had two choices. I was accepted into a 4-year university, but I decided to come to Tri-C after receiving a scholarship. I got my associate's degree at Tri-C. They transferred all my credits straight into Baldwin-Wallace, so I started at Baldwin-Wallace University as a junior. My name is Tyler Leonard, and I earned my first degree at Tri-C.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program has been recognizing role model students and teachers since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Supporting Education. There, you can nominate students in kindergarten through 12th grade as academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible for the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family cool this summer,
let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant, whatever it takes.
And to keep your family comfortable, it takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling. Find them at 440-449-HEAT.
Welcome back to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Well, the preseason is done. Regular season is up next. But right now, Freddie Kitchen and the Browns are in cut-down mode. They have to get to the 53-man roster limit by 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. Kitchens talked about the preseason in its entirety, as well as Wyatt Teller, the guard that the Browns traded for yesterday from the Buffalo Bills, and also how the last few spots at that wide receiver position have been shaking out on the roster.
I thought it was very impressive that Ishmael Hyman dropped a couple of balls early, one of them for a big play. And, we continue to talk about just playing the next play, and he came back and had a pretty good game. So without looking at it, I would say that. I like guys that face adversity and come through it. And, he did that. So I thought Ratley moved around well. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Freddie, I know you haven't seen the kid yet, but what are your plans with Teller, who you got from Buffalo today?
Just to get him here, get him a physical in the morning, and meet with him tomorrow afternoon. That's all I know right now on him. I mean, I know I like what I see on tape, but other than that, I talked to him on the phone. That's it. He's excited to come. Only a 3-hour drive, he said. So.
Would you be a candidate to start right guard, or is it depth move?
Yeah, let's let him get here first and see. Everybody's a candidate. I said, like the kicker. Hell, I can't tell you what we're going to do right after the first game, so I'll just say something. Y'all want all these answers that I can't give you, so I'd rather give you an answer and let you run with it. All right. I like to kind of see y'all run with it, but anyway.
No, you have 10 days now.
Did you hit another hole in one? Is that why you're saying so good?
You have 10 days to the opener. Your practice games are complete. How do you feel about where you stand?
I like our team. Again, this is never easy. We're going to have some good football players, some good guys, good people. When somebody busts their ass for you and they do everything that you want them to do, it's hard to make those business decisions to let people go. And there's going to be some of those decisions made tomorrow that's going to be very difficult. So, I respect the hell out of the locker room that we had. They came together. We're truly not the Cleveland Browns until tomorrow. And then even after tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday, we're still always looking to improve. So nothing's never final in this business. But the guys that that's gonna not be here anymore, I hold the utmost respect for those guys.
Freddie, as you went through this preseason, did you answer the questions that you were looking to answer and maybe find confidence where you entered camp maybe not having as much confidence?
I think we built toughness. We wanted to get that accomplished. We proved to ourselves that we could be tough. That's more so the case than anything. I think we were resilient from the standpoint of we didn't let one day affect the next day. We had a couple of days there where you're coming off of breaks, like an off day, and we came out and had good days. So that's a good sign that somebody can refocus and have a good day. Now, we had a couple of them that we weren't, but we did show that we had it in us. We showed that we were in it together at times. So we just need to continue to build on those things, because those things are ultimately what's going to affect our season. It's not the outside. It's not you guys saying this and that, the national guys saying this or that. It's not anything like that that's going to affect our season. That only affects you if you let it affect you. And I think we've got some guys that block out that noise. And if they do that, we'll be successful. It's never going to be about talent. These guys have been talented in other places, and I think they recognize that. And they recognize that there has to be more to a football team, a successful football team, than just talent. And if they do that and they'll keep that mantra going and they'll play for each other and hold each other accountable, we'll be fine. And I think we found out that we could potentially be that. And if we do, we'll be fine.
Did anything about your first training camp and preseason as a head coach surprise you?
No, I don't think so. I don't, you know how late you eat lunch sometimes? You don't eat lunch until 2, and then, I'm not being facetious. I mean, you eat lunch at 2 and then you're expected to eat dinner at 5:30. Like, that's kind of weird to me. You know, other than like some timing and some logistics things. No, not much. You know, I was very pleased on how we went to Indianapolis and how we performed and how we stayed focused and how we hung out with each other after practice. I thought that was a big building time for us as a team, within the groups and also collectively as a team.
What did you think of Braxton Miller's night?
I thought he did well. He had a couple balls that got called back from penalties, I think. But he took one screen and made something out of it. Didn't look like there was much there. Used his hands well. You know, I thought he did well.
You got a little bit of an extended look at Dontrell after he missed the past couple games. How do you feel about your backfield at this point going into the season?
I'm comfortable with our backfield. You know, we've been comfortable with our backfield for a while. We think Darnus can play. We think Dontrell can play. We think Trayon gives us some things, and I think Uno gives us some things. So, did you see that run he made today with the safety in the hole? So, that was a hell of a run, you know, and that ended up being a 6 or 7 yard gain.
What do you think Devereaux Lawrence's camp and preseason and the way he finished it tonight says about what he can do for you?
Well, he wasted no time tonight, right? That was him in the backfield, so I think he kind of wanted to show everybody that wasn't a fluke. So I think he certainly did that. I was very impressed with Devereaux. Devereaux carried the practices over to the games. He was the same way in practices. And, you know, I'm always happy when guys do that. You know, what you see in practice is what you see in the game. I just want to know what we're going to get when they cross the white lines. I know what I'm getting from him.
And up next for the Browns on the field, the home opener, regular season opener at First Energy Stadium against the Tennessee Titans. That comes up a week from Sunday. Want to tell you, legalized sports wagering just a little bit over an hour away from downtown Cleveland. Presque Isle, Downs and Casino. The Bet America Sportsbook open and ready to go. Browns 5-point favorites over the Titans in that home opener, over under 45.5 points. 50 state-of-the-art kiosks makes sports wagering very easy. That's Presque Isle, Downs and Casino, the Bet America Sportsbook in Erie, Pennsylvania, a little bit over an hour away from downtown Cleveland. That'll do it for us on this edition of More Sports and Less. Levine. Weekend Winners Edition. We will see you back here next Friday for the Weekend Winners Edition. Remember, Les Levine will be here Monday from 6 to 7. He'll talk Indians, he'll talk Browns. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you again next Friday.